So this is just that thing of relationships. To make something look light, you want to put what is around it. You want to make what is around it a little bit darker. So that is what I'm doing now. And the earring that was just a moment ago quite dark looking is now looking quite light. So that worked quite well. As I get here, I just want to see, okay, this is her hair. So I'm going to take the darkness into the hair. I'm going to make the hair a little darker than the background. Not too much detail. And just basically a shadow. So the hair right now isn't going to be anything in particular. So it's just a shadow. It's like a solid object. And then just to enhance the fact that the darkness of the hair is darker than the background, I lightened up a little bit over here. It helps two things. It obviously helps the hair to be distinguished, but it also makes the background look a little spacious because it's like the light is shining a little brightly over here and less brightly over there. So that helps to give a sense of space. If it's just flat, it looks like it's just the paper because it's just getting the same amount of light everywhere. But if there's space in a room, even a wall will have different patches of light and dark because that's just the way light falls in a space. Alright, so she is starting to stand out from the background. And then I'm going to take my blending tool, which I put, oh, here it is. And then just here, so I've still got a line over there, so I just want to blend that out a little bit. And then I actually want to go over the edge, so I'm just going to zoom in just a touch so you can see what I'm doing. She actually looks quite strong against the background, but there's quite a cut edge over there, like I've taken a pair of scissors and cut a piece of paper out, so like a collage. So just taking that little shadow over a touch just to soften it. It gives a sense of us walking or talk, even if we're standing in front of a person, we're still moving, and so the edge of someone or something constantly changes. So if you have too sharp an edge, it actually just makes it look less real. People would think that that would make it look more real, but it actually doesn't, because that's not actually what we see. We're constantly seeing things moving, even slightly. Either they're moving or we're moving, and so the edges keep changing. All right, so she looks okay, but I just want to, so the edge, what I do with my edges is I do little broken lines. So I blurred out the edge, which was great, and then it was a little too blurry, like she was melting into the background. So I'm putting a little line here with a gap, and then a little line over here. All right, so she's starting to look quite nice. The background there's enough of the background that it's defining the ear, it's making her look bright. So I actually don't need to do any more. At the moment, I'm just going to leave it like that and see where it takes me. Okay, so I'm going to travel up the face, and so what I want to do, I want to make the ear a little bit darker. So if you look at the photograph, I'm just going to hold it over there. The ear is a little pinker and darker than the cheek. So generally the ear is darker than the face. And then on top of the ear, there's a bit of a shadow. So I want to get that, because what that is going to do is it's going to make the face pop forward, just because the ear is slightly darker. So just basically shading it in, and then putting the shadow from the hair down, and then the hair on top. So the hair at this point is darker than that point, but right now I'm just going to shade it flatly because there's quite a lot. I just still want to plot down kind of large things before I put details in. So I'm shading it. If it happens to be a little bit lighter, so maybe I'll just leave that the way it is for now and just transition that so that I don't have a line. So I'll do that. And then I'm just going to be careful over here. We've got some light things over there. Oh, I need to zoom out just a little bit. So I want to make sure I keep white bits over here so that when I get to do those things in the hair, those little hair decorations, I have some white paper to play with, because if I get rid of those, then there's no sparkle anymore. And when I'm doing my shadow, I'm trying to get rid of the white paper so that the white of the face stands out, but then over here where I actually want the white, there's nothing to distract it. Because if I've got white in too many places, then my white doesn't actually look bright where it needs to be. So I have to be careful about that. All right, so basic shadows. Actually, she looks quite good. She's looking three-dimensional. So the edge of my face is looking cut out again, like I took a pair of scissors and a piece of paper. So I just need to soften that. And I actually need to put my phone right here because I keep forgetting what I'm doing. So this is just because I like to look back and forth quite a bit because things change, you know, quickly, where you think something's happening in a drawing and then suddenly it's something else. All right, so over here I've got to be careful because this cheek is pretty white, the background's pretty dark, and I just want to soften the edges before I do anything else. So I was doing it, it was getting a little dirty looking, and I don't want that. I just actually want just a little softness over there. So I'm just cleaning this, it gets dirty quickly. And then what I'm going to do, I'm just shoving that into the ear, so just blending that in. As I'm using my blending tool, I'm also getting into all those little white bits of the paper showing through. So this whole section of the ear now is a nice shadow color. And both, well, you know what, we're going to use an eraser to bring that out. So I'm just going to soften the edge again. Hair needs to be softened. Basically, it's quite blurry around here. All right, and then just cleaning that a bit. And then I'm going to take actually what's left of it to pull it in the face. So my blending tool is becoming a little bit of a pencil. So from the ear comes this little indentation, cheekbones over there, and then the jawline's over here, and in between there's a little shadow. So I'm putting that in, a little lightness, and then over here just shading that a little bit so she's nice and soft. And now going down the jaw in a long line, because my little short lines were making her look a little choppy, and she actually has quite a nice long line over there. So I just want to blend that in. And then I'm going to take my eraser. So it's just a normal eraser. I'm going to use an edge. I think I've shown you this a couple of times. I've got to try and find a sharp edge. And then on the edge of the ear, I just want to pull out a little light. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe I should zoom in just a bit. And then over here on the jaw, I felt like it's just a little too dark. So I'm just using my eraser as like a negative pencil, something that takes marks away. And just lightening that up a bit. And there's, you know, so much you could do. And then that becomes basically it. And that's okay because my pencil has stained the paper. So I think she's fine. She's not too bad. Okay, so one more thing before I look at your pictures. We're just going to do the earring. So I'm just going to zoom in as much as I can into the picture. I'm just going to put that, oh, you can't actually see it. Maybe I'll put it there so you can see the earring. Okay. All right, so the earring blurs into the background. So I'm going to start with that. As I'm blurring, it's a little light, so I'm going to have to go back and bring in some charcoal. But actually the background, as I'm blurring it, my background is coming into the earring, which is actually quite nice. So what I'm doing, I'm constantly being aware of what's happening. So I have a plan, but I don't have to stick to it. I can actually go with what's happening because sometimes the accidents are better than my original idea. So I blurred that in. That actually looks quite nice. I started blurring. There's a dark line down the earring, sort of just off center. So I tried to do that with my blending tool and there wasn't enough darkness. So I'm going to do that with my pencil. And you don't need too much. You know, the thing is with this, it probably already looks nice. I mean, it looks like an earring. So there's not a, or it looks not like an earring. It looks shiny and round. So there's not a huge amount to do. Everything else is just a treat. It's like a box of chocolates. Everything you do makes it just that much nicer, just that much more fun to do. So what am I doing? I'm just going to lighten up the middle a little bit. I actually want to be careful that I don't get rid of that nice bright spot, which is slightly in the wrong place, but you know what? It doesn't matter. hugely. And then just to give it a little bit more structure, I'm just going to put a few little broken lines for the edge, but I want to make sure my lines don't just sit there as lines, they actually become the background. So there's a lot of pushing and pulling because now I've made it a little too flat over there. Okay, and then what I want to do, I want to maybe make this a little lighter. My blending tool also works as an eraser, as you can see. So at this time it's pulling some color out. And then up here, I'm just going to make that a little darker and at the same time kind of do the jaw. This is delicate work because there's all kinds of things going on at the same time. And they're all important things. So I've got to make sure I don't forget about them. Okay, she's looking good. Now my bottom of my earring is kind of disappearing. In the picture it sort of disappears, but mine in my drawing is a little too vague. So I just want to put the structure back over there and then actually just make that a little darker. The reason I want to make it darker is because the background is about the same grey as the earring, and I actually want the earring to pop out a little bit more. Alright, so it's looking okay. It just could be a little rounder at the bottom and on that side, and maybe just a touch over there. Okay, she's not too bad. Okay, so I'm looking at the picture in my camera, which is like me standing about a yard away from my picture, so it actually looks quite nice. Alright, so I'm going to stop my drawing for a second and have a look at your pictures. Record. Okay, little shadow becomes the cheekbone shadow, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to make my way around over here because the edge of the face also has a little shadow, which is very nice, and then I'm going to blur out the hair and then blur the hair into the ear and just get this a little bit out of focus. And I'm not going to do the hair things just yet. Okay, because what I like the subtleties, the shading, the roundness of the face helps me to feel convinced the features are working. So she's just got a little shadow around her head. Okay, so I'll do this eye in a minute. We'll just go back down here and I'm just going to zoom in. All right, so over here I'm just going to take this shadow and pull it out. In fact, I'm going to do it with my finger because I know some of you don't actually have a blending tool. So a blending tool is a nice thing. So it's just, you can actually get a pack of blending tools. If you look on Amazon and you buy blending, it's just blending, like blending anything. A blending tool, you'll get a pack of, I don't know, lots, like 12 or so. And they're very nice because your finger, you can't quite see what you're doing. And also you just get this vague shade. So it's actually quite nice to use this because it's got more subtlety to it. So the other thing, let's see, what else could I do? I could use a paintbrush and then put this around like that. Whoops, as long as I don't poke through it, which I just did. All right, so, or a pencil. I mean, this way you kind of have a, wait, where are we? There we go, like an edge, and then you could use that. It's a little clumsy, but once you get into it, you get used to it, and there you go. So that is actually quite a nice way of doing it. You can't quite see what I'm doing, so I'm going to change black to the blending tool in a minute. But that's not bad. If you can do that, you can even put a little tape on so that it stays. But basically, it's just drawing with a bit of charcoal dust, which is kind of what you want. Okay, so that is just paper towel around a paintbrush at the bottom. And like I said, if you had tape and you tape it on, then you don't have to hold it on. But that's actually quite good. I'm quite actually pleased with that. I'm going to do a little bit more around the eyebrow. So again, when you've done your eyebrow, this blending, this subtlety is actually very important. This getting rid of the edges, getting those soft transitions so she doesn't look so cut out. Okay, I'm going to put that aside just because I know you can see better if I use the blending tool. All right, so I've blended this a little bit. She has a bit of a shadow over here. And then I'm just going to move it into where the other eye would start because everything's connected. So I just want to make sure we've got all these things relating to everything else. So one of the things is to figure out how wide that is, because it's a three-dimensional shape, so it's hard to see, you know, unless you do everything else. It's flat, it looks wide, too wide, so if I put the shadow on, it will help me figure out how wide I need to make it. So yeah, so that's not too bad. It may be a little too far over. Okay, so, but I will get back to that. So I'm just going to blend this down on the nose. I don't want to blend right from the center, just on the edge, and then this way you can shape the nose as well. So obviously the more the indentations, the deeper the shadow. And this comes around here, and then around the bottom. And she has kind of a pink nose. Obviously, maybe it's a day like today. She looks like she's come in from the cold. In fact, I'm sure my nose looks like that because it feels quite cold at the moment. Okay, now she has a highlight in the nose, which I don't want to get rid of. Like Lydia said, she lost her highlight in the earring, and that is a very common thing to do, to lose the highlight. So I'm going to be very careful and try to keep an area of white so that she keeps being, you know what, I should actually zoom in just a little bit so we can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I've left a little area of white over there, and then I'm just going to continue blending around it. She definitely has a pink nose. Over here, I'm making it a little darker because this is her nostril, and this is the flesh above the nostril, so it dips in over here. And then on this part of the nose, the shadow is not actually on the nose anymore. You'll look very carefully. The shadow is actually on the cheek. And these things are quite important, because if you get them wrong, there's a feeling something's not quite working, but you're not quite sure what. And that's because the light doesn't seem to be falling properly. If you get the light on something, you know, that shouldn't have light, you kind of get that indentation going in a weird way. It doesn't quite work. So yeah, so this is, I just learned this over the years, to look at the edge of the nose to see if the shadow is actually on the nose or on the cheek around it. Okay, so she's getting there. I'm going to blend this in just a little bit because we're in a blending mood. And just also trying to get rid of the outline a little bit. I'm going to bring it back, but I don't want it to be a line. So, Helen, you can think about this as well. When you can actually shade over your outline. So if you've got a line, you can just take whatever you're using, your pencil, charcoal, and just take that outline and make it into a patch of shadow. And on the side of the nose, there actually is a darkness, so you can also use the outline. You just want to make it wider. Can you see what I'm doing, hopefully? Okay, so yeah, so over here you may have had a line. I'm just going to make it a little broader over there, and then over here it kind of disappears a little bit. I'm leaving a lightness in the middle of that shadow over here because that's the reflected light. Okay, and I'm going to use my blending tool because it's a little bumpy looking, and then actually I'm going to just blend it out here as well. So I'm going quite slowly at this point. This is because I really like this part of the face. There's so many shading bumps and things which I really enjoy doing, and it just looks so nice when you get it right and the shadow works. It's just so satisfying to look at, so it's worth taking time to do it. So just blending that in. All these little bumps and things of white tend to get in the way of the overall feeling. And the other thing is the shadow needs to be softened over here, so I'm actually trying to take it off just a little bit. So I'm just cleaning my blending tool, and I take it away from my paper. I'm just kind of getting rid of that chalk dust because I need it to be lighter over here. Okay, let's blend that a little more. This side of the cheek is actually darker than that side, or this right hand cheek is darker than the left hand cheek. So I can take this shadow and just take it over a little bit to the other side. And then she has a little redness to her eye, so I'm going to put that in. And then we get to the eye itself. So still using my blending tool. I'm looking at where the shadows are, so her eye may turn out a little differently. Actually, no, I think we're fine. I didn't actually do that too wrong. Okay, so still working on the shadows. This is the shadow in the eye, as in not in the eyelid, just in the eye itself. And then this comes out. It's actually the eye as well. It's going into the shadow over there. So I think I need to actually draw a little bit more on the eye. Okay, she's not looking too bad. She has her eyes a little high up. So let's see, we've got this over here. This is the eyebrow. Okay, so good time to do the eyebrow. The eyebrow is not an actual line. It's a couple of lines that break up. So don't put too much in. You actually don't need a lot. I put a little bit there and she sort of looks like she's got an eyebrow. Let me move this up just a little bit so we can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, so a little bit of an eyebrow, and the upper lid coming down here. There's a small gap over there, I mean between the eyelid and the nose, so not so huge, so I'm looking at widths at this point. And then shapes. So the eyebrow goes up a little bit, and then at the same point the eyelid goes down. Okay, and then it disappears somewhere in the cheek. Okay, and then the eyelid, there's a kind of a flatness over here. So you see how I'm just doing a little bit and then looking. It's like I'm finding my way through a jungle. I want to make sure I don't crash into anything. Okay, so now I've made that far too short. I'm just going to erase this, give her a slightly bigger eye. Okay, got that over there. I'm just going to bring this down. Yeah, I'm going to bring that down to about here. And put the shadow back underneath. Take my blending tool. She has a lightness to the white part of the eye on the left, so I want to make sure my shadow doesn't go over there. Okay. Where are we? Okay, little darkness over here, and I'm going to put the pupil in, which is about there. Well, the iris and the pupil. And she has a little highlight, so I think it's too late for the highlight. So I'm just going to use my blending tool to make it soft. And then I may cheat, I may get a little bit, well, it's not actually cheating, but I'm going to probably get a pastel and put some white in. Okay, she seems to be looking in a different direction than in the photograph, but that's okay. Okay, so just at this point, seeing where the shadow is, it's more in the eye than on the lid. I think she's getting there. And you know, and the thing is also to keep an eye, do we need to put any more in? I mean, does the eye look fine as it is? Does it need, I think it just needs a little more darkness down here just to give it a bit more of a feeling of the whole lid and eye ball and eye socket thing. So I think that's fine. Actually, she looks okay. All right, so I just want her to not end in a flat like paper cutout thing, so I just want to give a little more darkness over here. And you know what, she has a dark head. This is actually kind of fun to do this, put this in. Let me zoom out just a little bit so you can see, because the more you put in, the more glowy her face looks, and I like that. All right. Once I've done this, I'll look at your pictures again. I just want to get rid of all these little white marks over here, and I actually do want to blend this a little bit because I want her to look soft. Over here, soft as in the shadows, kind of just putting this like misty darkness on her face. And you can see the background is lighter on this side, and if you look in the photograph, it's kind of suddenly lighter, which you don't notice until you draw. It's like she's really dark, and then suddenly there's a strange light on that side. And that's just because the side of her face over here and the side of her hat is dark, whereas on this side it's pretty light. So we tend to see that. When we see something light, the background is going to look dark just because our eyes are, well, the pupils are contracting because you've got so much light coming in. And so then if you look in a dark space, like if you walk into a room after you're out in the daylight, everything is black. And then suddenly as your pupils open up, you receive more light and then it looks brighter. So it's that kind of illusion that we get, that everything's very dark next to the light. So there's that sense of reality, but also it just makes it look brighter. And then if you want to have this feeling darker, which is what's happening over here, I'm just going to make the edge a little bit darker. Then you want the background lighter. And this is the three-dimensionality. This is just, it's called atmospheric perspective, where the light around you, atmosphere is in terms of light and dark, and softness, you know, like blurriness. That's what makes it look three-dimensional. So this is all very important. I just want to make this a little darker still. And I do want to make the background a little bit darker because, again, we want to look at how bright the face is. So over here, that's the lightest light. So light is light. Everything else should be darker. And with something that's a sketch or something we don't have a huge amount of time, or we don't want something to look totally finished, you have to decide where you're going to put those darks. So this could just leave itself as it is. I don't need to put anything here, but the background is actually quite important because the background is giving the sense of space and air around her. And if we tone it correctly, like I'm doing, making this a little bit darker but not too dark, it's going to really help her look three-dimensional and then make her look real, you know, because that's kind of the thing we're doing, is making, you know, like playing dolls, basically. You're making this creature that is just charcoal on paper actually look alive. So, and that's fun. I like that. Okay, so let's see where I am. And this could do with a bit of paper towel rubbing. It's not too bad, but, and I can always bring it back. That's the thing, is, you know, do what you feel is necessary, and then if it doesn't work, just go back to where you were. It won't be exactly the same, but you know, it'll probably be better, actually. That's what I find. So I'm going to try and smudge it a bit. Maybe I'll give it a little bit more because now it's gone a little too light. But now I'm giving it 2 layers, and I think that's just going to look a little bit more interesting. And I'm just going to zoom out, and then I will look at your pictures. We'll finish that side and we'll start working on the other eye. Okay, there we go. All right, so the stuff, I mean, this is kind of the scary part, putting in the other eye. So I'm just going to, first of all, make sure I put it in the right spot. So I put a little line down and making sure everything is lined up. That could go a little bit higher. Okay, and then putting the shadow in a little more over here. Working softly because then I can change it, you know, and also there's so much shadow around the main shadow that if I have to make it higher or lower or what have you, it actually won't be too hard to do. Okay, and then I've got to make sure the bottom of the eye is lined up, so I'm going to put a little line over there. I'm seeing if I can actually zoom in just a little bit more. Okay, so the bottom of the eye. And then the angle of this shadow is going to be pretty much the angle of this shadow over here. And where does the eye end? Somewhere about there. Okay, that looks okay. She has this like droopy lid over here. So put that in. And then Again, just using a very light touch because I have a feeling this is going to go wrong. Putting that in. Okay. Yeah, it did go wrong. It was a little high. I need to make it lower. Alright, then the upper lid. Okay, it's a little wide. I'm just going to move that in. And then I'm just assessing. So like I said, if I look into my camera, it's like I'm standing back. So I see it from a distance. I can see the proportions much better if I do that. Okay, she doesn't look too bad. I'm going to make the shadow a little stronger. And being careful that I keep my lid light. So I've got a couple of lines because I had to adjust it, but generally I want to keep it light because that is really helpful in getting it correct. It's not just the side-to-side two-dimensional proportions. It definitely is the three-dimensionality that makes it look like it